you good to go?
Yep, we'll see. We'll see if the universe stops us again.
Welcome back to the Open Up podcast, everyone, to episode 77 with Dixie Ramirez, aka Smiles. That's your nickname now. Thank you for doing this, buddy.
Oh, no, thank you so much for having me on. And before we get started, I would just like to acknowledge the Whadjuk Noongar people. They are the natural law custodians of the land that we're operating from. So we ask the ancestors to come in and help us to translate or transmute anything that is going to offer service, clarity, moments of our heart to anybody that's viewing this. So, yes, thank you so much for having me.
Awesome, buddy. Straight off the bat, could you describe the way that you view yourself as a woman and or human?
Oh, my God. This is probably ever ongoing and creating because I'm honestly not the same person that I was yesterday or this morning because constantly I'm accumulating more information, more knowledge, and other things are activating on. But I guess at the moment, the way that I would describe myself is a hybrid human. And I used to see that, it is true, I used to see that as something that put me at a disadvantage. And throughout the last couple of weeks, through expanding into myself and meditating and looking at aspects of my life, I've decided that it is now my superpower because never before has the world seen people of such mixed nationality and race. You know, like my dad is Aboriginal, Filipino, Japanese, and from South America. And then on the flip side, mum's Maori, Scottish, Scandinavian. So I'm literally this hybrid human with all of these different aspects and really strong cultural practices all within my DNA. So yeah,
that's amazing.
Super, I think.
I love that.
Yeah, I think you could relate. What background are you?
I'm Maori European.
Oh, see, hybrid. We're so special and we're seeing so many different little children come into this world and they've got all these different gene codes and just you can see it coming through their eyes. They've just got this fountain of knowledge from all over the world.
Okay. Seeing as your story pretty much starts throughout childhood, you comfortable just diving straight in?
Yeah, definitely. So I am a mixed breed child and I came from a Aboriginal man and a Maori woman, and their love story is, I would probably say something similar to like Romeo and Juliet for that era because they did come from two completely different worlds. So they met up in Port Hedland, which is now a mining town. But back then, my grandfather was one of the first Maori men to come over and become a train driver for BHP. So they met when they were really young, and obviously coming from those two backgrounds was low socioeconomic. So a lot of poverty, a lot of, issues like suicide, rape, drugs, alcohol abuse, because unfortunately, back in the day, Indigenous people, especially from this country, were paid in alcohol and cigarettes and not money because they weren't even considered to be humans.
Wow.
So they were raised in two different Indigenous backgrounds that one had colonization happen very differently to the other. So although they fundamentally had the same sort of belief systems and connection to the earth, it had been lost through trauma and colonization. So then we had, at the time, two very broken individuals come together and create a child out of that. And that was me. So Mum and Dad were really young, and they honestly didn't have the tools to be good, strong role models. So my grandparents actually raised me, and then I bounced from aunties and uncles. So I was raised in very different households. I was raised with this whole viewpoint that I was unwanted and unloved. And as a child, being raised to feel like, one, you're unloved, you're not safe anywhere, and you don't belong, it created a lot of discomfort and really bad belief systems. And with that, it created this ego of someone who, because I didn't have love and security, I didn't need love and security. And it caused a lot of kind of like knock-ons from that And I started to create a human out of trauma.
Okay.
And somebody that I look back on now and I'm like, whoa, I can't believe I used to operate like that, or I can't believe I used to see the world from that point of view. So,
well, it's a lot safer to push it away rather than attempt to get love if you feel like you don't deserve it, and to have someone tell you, actually, no, you aren't worthy of love.
Exactly. And especially when that person's you and you're living in that brain all the time, you know, constantly just, it became a self-fulfilling prophecy, you know, like I would think it, my reality would then reflect it. And I just got stuck in this victim cycle loop of, I'm not worthy of love, I'm not going to love anyone. So it then became this polarized kind of ego of, I'm just not going to let anybody into my world. I'm not going to be vulnerable, and I'm going to create this mask and this deflection that I don't need anybody in this world.
Wow, were you ever able to connect with anyone throughout that period?
I had certain people that I did, and looking back now, they were absolute guardians that came in to activate certain thought patterns so that I could have these realizations later on in life. And one of the most amazing people was my stepmom. And she was actually married to my dad when I was little, but they separated, but she always kept in contact. And she was just like this light beam that used to come through. And she's this amazingly strong Aboriginal woman who really has a strong foundation of who she is. And then she became a flight attendant. So she traveled the world and went and connected in with different cultures. So she'd always come back and like sit me down and really teach me how to be a woman. Because as an Indigenous woman, if you go back to our culture, we used to sit in circles with men and women, and they used to pass down the generational line what it was to be a man or a woman. You know, we were taught by the elders, the ancestors, we kept connected into the earth, and it was passed down. If you look over the history of colonization, it broke down those beliefs, those structures. You know, we do not sit in ceremony anymore with our great grandmothers and our grandmothers and our mothers, and we're not taught how to set boundaries and how to be respectful to ourselves and how to operate in this world anymore. So to have her come in my life every now and then and to teach me fundamentally what it was to be a strong woman in this world, I am incredibly blessed and grateful that I had her and still continue to have her.
How, looking back now, hindsight, it's easier to see, but how, the way she taught you to be strong, how did it differ in the way that you projected yourself as this person who was strong, who didn't need love?
It was a lot of changing the belief systems or even the perspective. Sometimes it's not the fact that you're looking at it wrong. Sometimes it's just that you're looking at it in the wrong angle. You know, what I've found growing up is a lot of my intentions were right on growing up, but it was the behavior in which I operated from and the way that I would articulate myself, which was missing in translation. So instead of being grounded and objective now, when I look at a situation, I used to be extremely angry, defensive, and I had an ability to use words where I could cut someone. And to me, that used to allow me to get power off someone because I was hurting inside, and hurt people hurt. So, you know, in hindsight now looking back, it's like, whoa, I see what she was trying to tell me all those years, but I needed to go through it to actually learn and understand the consequences to my actions. Because it wasn't until I started seeing how I was impacting and affecting the people around me that I really had to be like, whoa, that's not cool. And who am I to be hurting someone just because I'm hurting inside? You know, I'm the one inflicting that hurt on myself, not them. So it was really big realizations to be like, yeah, man, I'm creating this vibration in my world, not this person. They're just that external validation of what I'm thinking internally.
Yeah. So how did that feeling of being unwanted, unloved, unsafe, and like now projecting this version of yourself where you're very aggressive, like, with your words, how did that impact your life moving forward from there?
Oh, moving forward. So when I was younger, so out of trauma, out of pain, out of the inability to be vulnerable and so disconnected from my feeling body, I created this persona within the corporate world. And so I used to be a manager for Fitness First. Do you remember the clubs
Yep.
around here? Yeah. So I first started off when I was 21 in Sydney, and I was a gun at sales, absolute gun. Like I said, I have this ability with words to be able to kind of back in this time, it was suck people in.
Yeah.
And so I created this persona based off sales, based off ego, based off being the only female at the time to be able to smash the men in business. So I was up against people that had business degrees, master degrees. And here's me, this street kid that dropped out of high school when I was year 10 because I was such a rat bag, like absolutely annihilating these men in sales statistics and becoming, I became sales manager within like 4 months, which is company records. And then I had this very dominant masculine energy that used to get along with the high managers. And it was quite an egotistical environment to be thriving in for a female.
Yeah.
So these behaviors of this alter ego that just needed dominance and power really thrived in this environment. And I started to warp into somebody that, looking back now, I'm not very proud of, like the way that I used to conduct myself and the way that I used to speak to people makes me completely ashamed right now when I look back. But what I'm learning at the moment is I had to go through that in order to understand the impact that I was making on people and how I was showing up. And, I think the breakdown happened when I was out at one of my sales consultants under me's party. And the ego came out, and a couple of wines and a couple of shots, and I ended up getting really violent, which is not in my nature. Usually I'm aggressive, but not violence. And I remember breaking down on the floor of the club and thinking, who have I become? And that was kind of like the big pivotal moment where I was just like, I can't be this person anymore. Like, it needs to stop. I'm not going to be what I was expected to be growing up. It's my self-fulfilling prophecy going on again. And I'm not going to be this next generation that inflicts this so my children have to heal from it. So, yeah, that was really powerful to me.
Looking back now, do you have an understanding of why you became this person within that role?
Yeah, I think a lot of it had to do with society views on who I was and who I was growing up. So, like I said, I had a very diverse background growing up. And I had, my second stepfather was Welsh. And like, looking back now, I'm like, oh my God, that family was an absolute blessing to my life. But as a child, when you are around predominantly white people from like a Welsh background that have these stereotypes from what a black person is, I grew up feeling very dirty and feeling very ashamed of who I was.
Yeah.
Like I used to be in the bathroom as a kid putting powder on my face and wishing that when I grew up I was white because I wanted to fit in, So it was this whole stereotype of showing up as a black woman who really doesn't understand where she comes from because her parents separated when she was little and her mum married a Welshman and her mum was, immersed in this world that didn't understand how to kind of coexist. So instead of acknowledging that she was different, they just pretended like it wasn't an issue. And so like growing up with that and then being bounced from family member to family member and then going through high school, I went to 7 different high schools in 7 years, which is insane. And I dropped out at year 10. So like, it was just intense, like moving around and feeling unsafe and feeling unloved. I then fueled it all into this place where I finally felt accepted, like when I found that job in corporate, it was like, oh my God, this is who I am. And so I owned it. And because I had all these belief systems of, you don't love anyone, you don't let anybody in, everyone's out to get you, I created this personality based on trauma.
Yeah. I completely resonate, although I don't understand being stereotyped as much as like someone of Aboriginal descent would,
Yeah.
Like, I grew up with a family where I was very aware that when my dad was born to an English woman who come over on a boat, that her parents wanted her to give him up because he was black.
Yeah.
And so, like, growing up with that feeling and being low socioeconomic, not fitting in, I always wanted to be white. So I always hated the fact that I was brown.
Yeah.
And so I try and associate with white people, but I didn't fit in. So, like, I understand what you're going through with that. With the sales job, I feel like it's a toxic trap as well, especially if you're in it for the wrong reasons, because they base everything off KPIs, and if you achieve those sales targets, that means you're good enough. And so for someone who's constantly searching for validation that you belong, that's a fucking trap.
Yes, it was. And it allowed for this beast to grow because I was really good at my job. Because although I had these really bad behaviors and belief systems around who I was and who I should be in this world, I also have a lot of empathy and compassion, and health and fitness is well within my realm. So it was like a double-edged sword, because I really enjoyed helping people, but at the same time, my integrity was constantly being questioned because of the, tactics that we had to use and the pressure that we had to put on these people to get a membership. So, yes, I was definitely walking in two worlds.
Yeah. I've done sales in the gym for a while as well, and I know that feeling, like, of being someone who you feel is authentic and then having to sell someone who doesn't want a membership at that point.
Yeah, or just can't afford it. Do you know what I mean? Like, I had months, because I was first started off in the Inaloo Club, and then I got moved to the Belga Club when I had children. And that is like low socioeconomics, right? So like, I would have mums or people come to me and their bank account's been cleared because they've been 3 months in debt, and, Easy Debit's just come through and completely taken it. And now they've got no money for food. And like, I could feel the pain and I could feel these people. And at the end of the day, I just had to go, well, there's nothing I can do. You were late on your membership. My hands are tied. So it was a very different world to be operating within.
Yeah. Back to that moment when you're in the club, you've been violent, and you're questioning why you're acting the way you're acting. Where do you go from there? Because for most people, it'd be scary to even attempt to confront the parts of themselves that they don't like.
Yeah. So I was on the ground, and I can just remember just this feeling of absolute, like, this is rock bottom. This is as worse as it gets, right? This is it. I'm never going to feel as low as I can right now. And it was like a trickle effect, because I went and stayed at a friend's house, and then I went home and I was bedridden for the next 3 days. I couldn't get out. I was like a dark night of the soul, right? I was in bed. I didn't want to get up. I didn't want to go to work, which for me was a huge thing because I never called in sick. Like, I was that person that was there early, home late, worked 6-7 days a week if the company needed me, right? And this was when I was still with Fitness First. And so 3 days in bed, and my mind was going overdrive. You're worthless. You're nothing. Look at what you've become. Like, I can't believe you sunk that low. And then the whole thing of, oh my God, I have to go to work and face these people. I'm their boss. Like, what do I say? What do I do? And so 3 days in bed, and then I had this absolute guardian drop into me, and her name's Christine. And she's actually a shaman that operates up in Mundaring Hills. And I don't even remember how I got her contact, but I just remember messaging her because I was too scared to call her, and be like, I would really like to book an appointment with you, to come and see you. And she was like, yeah, not a problem. And I did. I went up to the hills, and she's this beautiful human that allows the source to come through. And so when I went and laid on her bed, I was very closed-minded to everything, because obviously I wasn't raised with my cultural traditions. And I was also raised in a Western culture that deems that sort of stuff to be cuckoo crazy or woohoo or like not real, So I went into this room, and she laid me on this bed, and my grandfather was like my mentor and my driving light in this world, but he passed away when I was 14. I laid on that bed, and I was able to calm my mind, and I felt my grandfather come through. And then I felt the whole team of angelic support that I had around me. And in that moment, I knew I was loved. And it kind of like just flicked something on inside me. And it was like, oh my God, how could I have spent my whole life shutting this out when they have always been here and with me? So that feeling still stays with me. And even though sometimes it's a little bit quieter than I'd like it to be, it's still there. And it was like that unconditional love just flowed through me. And I was like, oh my God, I can change this. You know, I really can change this. I created it. I can change it. So that led on to like a 5-year journey to here we are now. And I had to really shed everything. You know, I went back to work with fresh eyes. I ended up becoming really bad at my job, and my state manager hated me because I just couldn't push it anymore. I just couldn't be that person anymore. And so he took it as a disrespect. Do you know what I mean? Because I'd been such an advocate worker for 7 years, and then I was in and I was like coming in late, going home early, because I'd realized I was missing out on raising my children, you know, and that was more important to me at the time. Plus finding where else I wanted to go into this world or who I wanted to be. You know, I didn't want to be this person anymore. So I think it took me 18 months from that point to transition out of that job. But like the universe answered my call because Good Life then purchased Fitness First. So it's kind of like it just like, oh, that's what's keeping you there. We're just going to take that from you because you're not loyal to Good Life, you know? So it then started an 18-month transition, and I was married at the time to an amazing soul, and he's still one of my best friends, and we co-parent like a boss. But with me falling apart and the ego coming down, I had to really face that I love you dearly, but I don't foresee us being on the same page anymore or this going forward as a marriage. So I had to step into becoming a single mum by myself, losing this job that I'd put my whole identity into and thinking, oh my God, what am I going to do with my life? I'm a year 10 dropout that's been with the same company for 10 years. Like, where else is there to go? So yeah, I had to do a lot of soul-searching, and I ended up at uni.
That's amazing. Couple questions.
Sure.
On choosing a shaman, how in the world do you allow yourself or give yourself permission to seek help, and then of all the help to choose a shaman? Like, do you have any understanding? Because most people find it hard to even just reach out to someone they love and say something.
Yeah, they do. With me, I didn't feel safe with anybody that I loved.
Okay.
And I didn't feel vulnerable enough to talk to them. You know, like I'd created this reality that my family were the enemy. You know, like they didn't want me. They didn't love me. They bounced me from house to house. You know, I was never good enough for them. So this was like the dialogue that's going on in my head. So to me, to seek out a shaman was the safe space because she didn't know me. She didn't have any idea of who I was. She just felt the energy and felt, you know, the guidance that came through with me. So I honestly don't know how I found her, but I'm also a very big believer in if it's meant to be, you'll find it. And she came through, I think through Facebook. I think one of my associates on Facebook shared her details, and I was just like, that resonates with me. Like, I'm very drawn to that. So, you know, I think I contemplated for like 3 days to message her though. It was big to message just to send that button. And then that whole dialogue came through of, oh my God, what if I'm not good enough for her to talk to me? What if I'm just too evil? What if I'm just too gone? So it was like this whole like knock-on effect of my thought patterns and my belief systems coming out.
Yeah, and that's a powerful insight into that too, is the fact that you just trusted your gut. You just went with intuition.
Sorry, I can't hear you. You're kind of breaking up and you're frozen. Hello.
Yeah.
I think you're here. Yeah.
Yes. I was just saying that like a powerful insight from that is the fact that you followed your intuition and your gut.
Yes.
And you didn't resist that. I think that's where people come up against a lot of barriers and get themselves in trouble because they don't trust themselves to get the help that's right for them.
Thing. Yeah, it is. And I guess that comes down to we don't understand how to use our guidance system. I think in this day and age, people get so immersed in the emotion. And I like to put it like this as, you know, like how you can see your friend doing something that's not within their highest self, you know, because you get that viewpoint. Like I put it in a way to my friend the other day as like, you're inside the truck. You're driving the truck, you know, look at your viewpoint. You can't see as much as me who's standing outside the truck. You know, I have a wider viewpoint of what's going on because they're so immersed in the emotion, they can't see through it. And I think when you learn how to use and activate your guidance system, you can feel in your body if the voice is for your highest good or it's stuck down in those lower survival system emotions, you know, like if it's coming from a place of fear, it's not your inner being talking. But if it's coming from this like resonance within like your heart and your gut that feels like, oh my God, this feels so right. That's the voice that you need to listen to. But unfortunately, that voice is turned right down. So it's trusting, you know, that feeling and where that emotion's coming from and learning how to kind of zone out from all of the background noise and really listen to that whisper that's coming through.
Storyteller by nature. I love it.
That's right.
You're more than welcome to not answer this, but sure. I want to know personally, because I feel like people who are in that state of transition would benefit. Why couldn't you see a future with your partner at the time?
Oh, I love him to death, like seriously, best co-parent in the world. But at that point in my life, I didn't have the ability to love myself, let alone to love him to the capacity that he deserved.
Damn.
You know, like I was just I had the inability to even see myself or love myself. And I used to project a lot of that on him. Like, poor dude, like we have some really cool conversations now about the stuff that he had to deal with being married to me. And like, it's just like, oh my God, I can't believe that I started a marriage and a family and I didn't even know how to love myself. And it wasn't too because I've just transitioned out of a really, really hard relationship with who I thought was my twin flame, my soulmate. And the same things came up and I was like, wow, it's not them. This is purely me and how I was conditioned to love and what I think boundaries look like in a woman and what I think I should uphold to be for a man, you know, like I had to be really, really, really truthful with myself and be like, I honestly don't know how to relationship, you know, like I don't, and I don't know how to stand my ground and I don't know how to put up barriers and expectations, you know, in a powerful way that is helpful and conducive for a conscious, beautiful relationship. So yeah, I had to put my hand up and be like, I don't know how to do this.
How have you gone about this process of becoming that self-aware and that vulnerable enough with yourself to admit that? Because it's so much easier to say it's their fault, they're not right for me. And that's something I did for years.
Yeah. Ego, man. I just had to put the ego down. And like, I've realized lately that anything that I'm resisting with aggression and kind of like that, you know, in life is probably something I need to push through. And it was like that transition from understanding, okay, you know, when you get that feeling, you're like, oh, I don't want to do this. Like, I don't want to go there. Like, I'm good. I've learned enough. You know, it's them. It's not me. I had to push through that wall and be like, nah, it is you. You have to look at yourself right now. And I think looking at my children is what helps me to kind of step back and take that viewpoint, because I started to realize and watch traits and behaviors that I had as a kid come through. And so I do not want my children to grow up and have to heal from their childhood. It is the last thing I want. You know, I want them to be self-sufficient, autonomous, sovereign beings that have an abundant amount of self-worth, that know who they are, that stand for truth, and that gravitate towards people that enhance their lives. But they know full well that if something's not working, It's because of the vibration that they're emitting to the world, you know? And so I had to look at them and be like, my biggest purpose in this world is for these little people to evolve and to raise the vibration of this planet. And anything that's stuck in ego is just not going to float anymore, because I got bigger stuff to do in this world. I have 2 little people that are looking for me for guidance, and I am not going to leave them with the same stuff that I had to growing up.
That's amazing. I fucking love that. I'm doing the same with my daughter, because I put her mother through hell while she was pregnant. We were broken up, and I treated her like shit, like absolute shit. And knowing that she's going to be born inheriting that sort of trauma, I'm doing my best. And knowing one day that her dad didn't want her, I'm doing my best to instill her with the belief that she's good enough, so that when she comes up against that, when we go through that, she's resilient enough to persevere through it with that belief.
Yeah. It's amazing, hey, because you go through those stages as a parent and being like, okay, I see where this comes from. I see how I was responsible for this, but I'm just going to ride it through with you, because later in life is where your aha moments come in, you know? Like, I'm reading this deadly book called 11 Lessons from Nelson Mandela, and it was written by his grandson. And, oh my God, his life and the transition that he had, because when he was 11, he went and lived with his grandfather, Nelson Mandela. Could you imagine that? Like, oh my God. But because he was living in poverty in South Africa and going through, you know, being a Mandela and having to hide and go through these different families. And then at 11, he was sent to live with his grandfather, who's regimented and the father of the nation. And he was sent to a private school in South Africa. Like, he was an angry teenager growing up because he didn't understand, why can't he go and play back at his old school and kick it with the bad boys, you know?
Yeah. And
it isn't now, looking back, I think he's like 36. In hindsight, he's like, whoa, my grandfather changed the trajectory of my life, you know? So I'm looking back, but when they're 30 and they're like, thanks so much, Mum, for being a hard ass. Thanks for having my, like, morals and my, you know, self-worth on point and challenging me, because I'm a bloody drill sergeant with my boys. I have other mums coming to me and being like, so how do I discipline? And I'm like, okay, this is what you do. You know, because boys and children need boundaries, but they need abundant self-love, and you need to get that inner dialogue happening, you know?
Yeah.
You know, telling them that they literally can be and do anything in this world. You know,
I love that.
Just be kind. That's my thing. And that's how I tuck them in every night. It's like this whole saying. And I tell them that they're safe, that they're secure, that they're loved, you know, and that they're powerful. And yeah, we are raising little game changers. And you know, like, one of my guides just came in and are you a Harry Potter fan by any chance?
Yes, 100%.
Oh, love Harry Potter.
That sound at the start, damn it.
You know the photo of Harry Potter's parents?
Yep.
And it's kind of like one of those historical photos for Harry and the kids. Well, that's how I see our generation, you know. We're those way showers. We're the ones that set the foundation and the strength to allow these little people to come through and be complete superheroes, you know? And, like, that's a big part to play in history.
Yep. I'll take that lesson on board, especially if it's got something to do with Harry Potter.
Yeah. Oh, I did have a Harry Potter moment last week. I went to a secondhand bookstore and got this book, and it's called Feel the Fear and Do It Anyway. But the previous owner had written in-depth, like, notes and stuff in it.
What?
And I was like, whoa.
Was that Tom Riddle's book?
I don't know, no. I'm in my own version of Harry Potter and the Half-Blooded Prince.
Yes!
Yeah.
Yes! Vibing.
No.
Seeing as you spoke about, like, getting to this level of self-awareness and vulnerability, we spoke beforehand about what you've used, and you brought up meditation. How did that come in, and how do you implement it?
Okay, so meditation started with me. So it was a bit of an ego start, because I had started going to some like seminars about personal development and self-awareness, and I started to listen to, in particular at the time, Preston Smiles and his beautiful wife Alexi Panos, and they were big advocates for meditation. So like, because my ego is still running rampant, I've had an awakening, but like ego, because that's all I know. I'm like, you know, I'm spiritual. I'm bloody Aboriginal Maori. Like, I'm more spiritual than these Western people. And like, yeah, I meditate. I never really meditated. So like, I think there was like a good 2-3 years of me pretending to be spiritual. And it wasn't until I got into university. And so like the story with that is dropped out of year 10, had to do some tests through UWA, and shock horror, I get accepted. And I did my first semester, and man, I bombed. I bombed so bad, like failed. And my ego was like, oh my God, that was horrendous. Like, you know, you're not even smart enough to be here. And so I ended up going down to my stepmom's house, and we started to just have conversations. And she actually pointed out to me that I couldn't stay present. You know, I was constantly in my phone. I was constantly cutting her off when she was trying to talk to me. And I just wasn't living in the moment. And so like at the time, I remember driving home and being like, she's so wrong. I'm so present. I listened to everyone. And it wasn't until a couple of days later that my son said something, and I went, whoa, maybe I'm not as present as I think. So then I ended up starting with just like YouTube 10-minute meditations. And I was finding that my brain just couldn't switch off. And also they were doing it in a way that was really quite woohoo and fluffy is probably the best way that I could describe it. And I study medical sciences at university. So like I really relate when it's like to do with the body and like hormones and activation and all this sort of stuff. So I ended up finding, have you ever heard of Dr. Joe Dispenza?
Yes, I love him.
Oh, God, so amazing. So I ended up finding his book and read it, and I understood on a biochemistry level on what was happening when you meditated. And for me to understand the chemical processes that were happening and the fact that you're getting out into the quantum field, into the unknown, where you can actually turn into an antennae that draws in a possible reality that you want, I was like, whoa, I could be an X-Men here. And so like understanding the science was what got me into meditation. But then also being able to relay it back to like your iPhone. You know, when you've got too many programs running on your iPhone, you have to clear them out. You have to do updates. That is exactly what meditation does for you. It allows for your subconscious to reprogram and delete stuff that you picked up as a kid when you were scared and felt unloved and unworthy, and then you stored it within your system. So it's just like all these little biohacks is what I got kind of addicted to. Yeah.
Oh my God. I love that. That was the best like mini rant ever.
Awesome. I'm glad you delivered it.
You also brought up the fact that you had the right people around you and knowledge as well.
The funny thing is, we all have the right people around us. It's just the way that we're looking at them or the way that we view them. Do you know what I mean? Like you always have everything inside you, what you need, because one of those big things that I had to get my head around is the fact that my reality is just mirroring back everything that's inside. And when you can understand that, and science led me to that understanding, when you can understand that in a way that kind of helps to empower your belief systems, everything changes, you know, and you just realize, whoa, you've been right in front of my eyes the whole time and we've never even connected on this level, you know? So it wasn't until I was really open and going like, okay, so you're a reflection of who I am. There must be more there because you're only seeing what I give you. So let's just go a little bit deeper into this communication or this conversation or this relationship. And you realize that they're all there. And it's like, whoa, I have been hindering my own growth this whole time. It's not society's fault. It's not my mum's fault because she didn't know how to mum. It's not my dad's fault because he was a drunk, you know, like it's mine.
Yeah, and that thought can be either scary or liberating depending on whether you're ready to accept that or not.
You know what? It's always scary. It's always scary. And this book, Feel the Fear and Do Anyway, has made me realize everybody's shitting themselves. Everybody, you know? And unfortunately, the fear never goes away because we're growing, evolving creatures, you know? And we got to learn to love the fear. You know, that's been my biggest thing lately. Love the fear.
That's so powerful.
Yeah.
Couple questions before you wrap up, buddy.
Sure.
Knowing everything that you've been through, what would you say the quality of your life is like now?
Amazing. It's just getting better and better and better. Like today, I tagged Nelson Mandela's grandson in something I shared because did you know that Nelson Mandela's native language is the same language they use on Black Panther? Like, that's amazing. Like, how incredible. And anyway, I get like a message back from his grandson and he's like, bigs up. I'm like, oh my God, I'm on the vibrational communication band as Nelson Mandela's grandson. Like, to me, that's just like, wow, life is magical, you know? And it's looking into those little pockets of magic everywhere, you know, like seeing a rainbow and actually understanding that it's absolute magic beaming down on you. And I think when you get into like living in the present, you realize just how much magic and abundance and creation that you completely ignored most of your life. So my life is incredible. It's challenging and it's definitely been the hardest year of my life because I had to leave a relationship that I felt was like my world and my identity and be like, unfortunately, this is not conducive for who I am and who I want to be in this world. And although I love you, I need to love me more, you know? So that was a hard thing to be like, I'm sorry, I can't do this anymore. It's not because I don't love you. I do. I care so deeply, but I need to love me more in this. And so stepping into that and stepping into the present, my life's just magical. Like I'm literally an alchemist in my world.
Yes. What have you added to your life or removed from it to improve the quality of it?
I removed a toxic relationship. You know, I removed the toxic person who I showed up as in relationships. And I removed a lot of associations of people that are just not on my level. You know, like I used to be a really big people pleaser and really big on like loyalty is a big thing. So like just getting really honest, but coming from a place of I love you. I just love me more. And at the moment, we're not vibing. And at the moment, that is not conducive to my growth and who I want to be. So we might come back around. We might not. I'm so grateful for who you were and what you show up in. But right now, I just need to do me. And, you know, that is so powerful in itself because I think I was raised to feel like it's selfish to put me first.
Yeah.
But it's like the opposite.
100%. And especially with those Indigenous cultures, being loyal to the tribe meant you were safe. So if you're not loyal, you know, you fear that lack.
Exactly. You do. But yeah, it was just that big leap of faith of like transitioning from that fear base to, no, I'm good. I got me, you know, I'm all I need and I've got me, you know, I've survived this long and I've survived through worse. It's just getting better.
What are you most grateful for right now?
Oh, I'm most grateful for my two boys. Oh my God, these kids. I don't know about, I'm going to assume your daughter's probably similar, but like, oh my God, the brains and the divine guidance that just beams from these children.
Yep.
Like my 6-year-old the other day put on the dishwasher and he comes over and he's like, you know, Mum, I'm pretty much like technology to you. And I was like, what do you mean by that? And he was like, well, the definition of technology is to enhance one's life. And I enhance your life.
What?
I was like,
oh shit.
I was like, you know, like my kid, Lucas is 9 and he'll be like, hey Mom, let's play chess. You know, like we sit there and we play chess. I never played that as a kid. To me, that was like a privileged game. Or like my other son will go and Google like physicists. And now he's like into like the fact that in the next 10 years, we're going to have flying cars that operate off plasma. And so he's 6, right? And so he comes to me and he's like, yeah, Mum, I understand, that they're going to be able to rip the roads up and then we're going to be able to, replant Mother Earth. But what about air pollution? And I was like, whoa, get back and research that.
That's amazing. I love it.
Seriously, kids are lit. They are so awake, and we learn so much from them. And so, they are definitely the biggest lesson in my life, because as much as I'm teaching them, they're giving it back tenfold,
Yeah. Yeah, and it's because they haven't got those programs to work through. They've, the better we raise them, the more connected they'll stay.
Exactly. Oh. And I think one of my favorite sayings is, don't buy your children what you didn't have, teach them what you weren't taught, and that's kind of been my whole thing, is I love you, but I'm going to teach you how to be a good human in this world. And with that comes the good and the bad, it's not, I'm just going to spoil you because I need to give you and I need you to need me. It's no, I need to raise humans that can be self-sufficient, autonomous, and do good in this world. You know what I mean? With a purpose and truth assigned to it. And if they're living their purpose and they're happy and they're kind and they're sticking up for who they are, I'll be a happy mum.
I love it. All right. Last question. If you had the chance to put a message on a billboard where thousands of people would see it, what would it be?
Oh, if I had a choice. Oh, that's so juicy. I like it because that's literally codons.
Be the conduit. That's why I initially reached out to you, because I read in your Instagram bio conduit.
Yeah, be the conduit. You know what I mean? Seriously. That's a good one. I'll go with that because I feel like that came through my guides a message from you. So we'll go with that one.
Okay.
And I love that. I love being able to code on with different people and understand that there's a whole galactic team helping this work, we're never alone.
To wrap up, buddy, I want to just acknowledge the fact that you've made time for this. We eventually got there. We had some struggles, but thank you so much.
We had a lot of lessons. I'm actually intrigued to how different the conversation would have been last week,
Yes. I'm in a lot better place now, so it was definitely meant to happen today.
Yeah, same, me too. Because God, from last week, that shift that I've been through has been whoa, seriously, different viewpoint. Because last week I was really immersed on that victim story, and I think it would have come across as the empowered victim within me.
Yeah.
But just to get that next level and that, wider scope has been just a world of difference in terms of the message that's translated. So
I love
yay.
it. Well, I appreciate you, buddy. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much for your time, and thank you so much for your share this morning. It really touched my heart. I think it was yesterday.
Oh, yep.
And I can really feel the intention that's there, and the fact that you literally just want to help people. You're a freaking awesome human. So I'm so privileged to know that I'm on your vibrational band. So
yes.
Thank you.
Thank you. See ya.